I've been with my wife for 2 years. She has a 21-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old daughter from my previous marriage. My late wife passed away in 2014. She left a few things for our daughter, including a gold jewelry set. Her mom was devastated she didn't get to give the set to our daughter on her wedding day. I keep it in my closet since it's expensive and my daughter is too young to have it. I'll hopefully gift it to her on her wedding. We were sitting in the kitchen when my stepson was hesitant to ask me something. We're in good terms but have our fair share of arguments. He said his fiancée was taking something from his mother's and my closet, saw the jewelry set and liked it very much. He asked if he could borrow it so his fiancée can wear it at her cousin's wedding. I found this unacceptable. I told him his fiancée had no business being in the bedroom and that the jewelry isn't mine. It's for my daughter. He asked me if my daughter will agree to let him borrow it if he talked to her. I told him not to even talk about it again. He got all pissed and said things I do not remember. When he and his fiancée were at the wedding, I discovered that the jewelry set was gone. I told my wife and we looked all over the house. I called my stepson to tell him about calling the police because I really thought someone stole the set. He said there was no need, that he borrowed it and will return it after they get back from the wedding. I yelled at him and told him to come back with it right then. I kept calling him till 12 a.m. when he told me to stop calling and that he'd bring it in the morning. I couldn't sleep that night. I felt terrible. In the morning he showed up at 10 a.m. He didn't bring it and started stalling, saying he forgot he'd bring it the next day. At this point it was clear he gifted it to his fiancée and was stalling. I got so mad I told him I will be pressing charges if he doesn't return the set today. We got into an argument. My wife said his fiancée was the one who wanted the jewelry set. But he was the one who took it and it's not even mine, it's my daughter's, which made it worse. Because I'm responsible for whatever happens to it. His grandparents berated me after I told them this and got mad and defended him when I said that I will be pressing charges. He stole and needed to be responsible for his actions. He didn't respond to my final calls, so now I've given him one last chance, and it's over. I pressed charges today. They're saying calling the police was extreme and cruel. They're all convincing me to back down. He was replying to me sarcastically when I said I'd get the authorities involved, and he didn't take me seriously. His mom said she'd try to talk to him, but I had enough of him stalling, hoping I'll just let it go, so he can make his fiancée happy. I feel like an irresponsible idiot. I can't even look at my daughter without feeling frustrated and infuriated. I'm hurt, but what's worse is that this is my daughter's property that I couldn't take care of. My wife allows them into the room, although I told her not to several times. They're not kids and there should be some boundaries. I am a 19-year-old female. I have an estranged grandpa, more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have 2 other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older he saw him a little more and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man, to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister who is in right now and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, My brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18 and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally. But morally? My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills back / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued back / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man?